Thanks to an app of cheap international called Ciola for sponsoring this video. More about it later. No other country in human history traveled from the third world to the first world so quickly and so successfully. But what was the cost of this miracle? And is the Singapore's future still bright? Let's check it out in this video. Singapore is the tiny city-state in Southeast Asia. For my viewers who are not from this region, I would say it's located roughly somewhere between Australia and Japan. Very roughly. Despite the lack of national resources, today Singapore has super developed economy, top-rated healthcare, education system, and funny and sad at the same time, it's the world's best place to be during the pandemic, according to Bloomberg. That's why billionaires and their families from all over the world, especially from Asia, hidden from COVID in Singapore, leading to a boom in luxury real estate and in Bentley car dealerships. But back in 1960s, Singapore was a tiny, corrupted colonial outpost with a poor population, struggling economy, crime and ethnic violence. So, what are the main principles that Singapore had that made it so successful? Fighting corruption. And I mean not proclaiming it before the next election, but actually fighting against it. Crazy for some countries, right? When the first Prime Minister of Singapore, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, came to power in 1959, one of his first strategic goals was to get rid of corruption, as it was the core problem at that time. So PAP, the People's Action Party, attacked corruption top down. They did two things. First, they introduced the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau, which was looking for corruption cases and implementing harsh penalties. There is a well-known case of Tek Chiang Wan, who was a Minister for National Development from 1979 till 1986. Tek was investigating for corruption, accepting two bribes of almost $500,000 each from two private companies for helping them buy over a piece of state land for private development. In 1980s, that kind of offense was so serious in Singapore, so Ted decided to commit suicide in 1986. Second thing that helped to fight corruption was increasing salaries of civil servants. Singapore ministers are now the highest earning globally, along with Singapore's prime minister's salary of insane $1.6 million annually. And now compare it with Chancellor of Germany, miserable $370K, or with President of the United States with just $400K per year. So these two steps gradually decreased incentives to be corrupt down to almost zero right now. Wait, hold on. I feel like something is missing. Oh yeah, that's your like on this video and subscription to this channel. I'm not gonna bribe you to do it, you know? As I'm against corruption myself. So it's just a friendly request if you're enjoying this video. Solving housing problem. In 1960, due to a rapidly increasing population, more than 400,000 people were living in overcrowded conditions in old, decayed chop houses. There were also many cases of illegal squatting. Lee Kuan Yew thought that owning an apartment, especially a recently built fresh one, would make people feel more responsible and connected with their mutual land. That was really needed, as Singapore was a brand new independent country with a strong ethnic mix. So, the government began a massive construction project to provide accommodation for the large number of Singaporeans, either homeless or living in slums. So, these new apartments were heavily subsidized by the government and they were shortly named HDBs. And later in 2021, this housing option is used to fall in love and get married by Singaporean couples. By the way, now home ownership rate in Singapore is 88%, which is one of the highest in the world. Focus on human resources, not natural resources. In a parallel universe, Singapore wouldn't care about human assets if they had their own minerals. But the country was not as lucky as UAE or Norway, because there were no minerals in Singapore, even no fresh water supply, and that was a great luck. At independence in 1964, Singapore had a low-skilled and low-cost workforce. The idea was to help Singaporeans develop their skills needed to compete within the region and globally. So, Singapore's government set up industrial training centers for people who wanted to upgrade their knowledge or skill set. That was done in partnership with various multinational companies such as Philips, Indian Tata, Japanese Seiko. At the same time, high school and universities became more focused on science and mathematics. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew himself was a big fan of leveraging the best practices from other countries. Like, at some point he decided to spend a few weeks in the United States specifically to learn from them. So a similar approach was used for Singaporean students. Singapore sent its brightest students to elite universities in the West and paid for it. And it helped to achieve an initial goal for Singaporean citizens to become competitive in the global economy. Oh yeah, one extra point here. Remember I told you about increasing salaries for ministers? That was also done to persuade the smartest professionals to choose a minister role in the government versus a CEO role of an international corporation, as the salaries were similar in both cases. National idea and unified language. A newborn country needed some ideas and guidance to glue its people together. So, despite the four main religions and races receive equal treatment legally, English was chosen as a national language to unite citizens and allow them to take a part in the global economy. And of course, to make it easier for students to study abroad and return with the relevant global knowledge. After creation of the state forced by the 1964 riots, the new government moved aggressively to form a singular Singaporean identity. It included setting up a common culture, guidance on social behavior, and meritocracy. All that was intended to get people above old school ethnic groups' interests. And it worked out pretty well. Okay, but how's the future of Singapore looks like now? Bright? Not so bright? I personally believe its future is quite okay, because of two factors. First one, developed institutions. It's the same like the United States will be fine, it doesn't matter which president is elected at the present moment, as the US has a system behind it and the presidential power is limited. So even some very unrealistic scenario, some crazy person is elected as a president of the United States, he will not screw the country, because it has institutions behind it. Same story with Singapore. Number two, agility or readiness for quick changes if needed. For me, the best evidence of why this is working is the current pandemic and how Singapore has been dealing with it. There was no mess, almost. I mean, all the decisions have been made quickly, technological solutions have been rolled out on time. The result of these measures is that at the moment of making this video, there are just 47 deaths in total and 79% of Singapore's population fully vaccinated. Okay, but are there any threats for the future of the country? Though democracy is one of the country's ideals, even stated on the flag, along with peace, progress, justice and equality, the Singapore government is occasionally criticized on democracy issues. The main question is whether Singaporeans can raise their voice to address problems or not. In my opinion, the voice of people is heard, but via a different channel. It's reporting about any issue via dedicated apps linked to different government boards like education, health, infrastructure, etc. And surprisingly, it works. If something is not working in the way it's supposed to and many people reported it, there is a high chance that it's gonna be fixed. By the way, I mentioned this reporting culture in the other video of mine about pros and cons about living in Singapore, link in the description below. But despite what has just been said, the global reputation is a big thing and it's one of the potential threats for Singapore in the future. Another risk is related to a current pandemic. One of the Singapore's biggest roles is being a travel, business and finance hub. But due to the country's very strict measures, which is fair of course to protect its people, Singapore has been mostly closed for the last year and a half. In my opinion, Singapore needed to be maybe more adventurous and to start opening to the world again more quickly. Overall, Singapore is an extraordinary example of how one country can become successful in a very limited amount of time if the strategic vision and right execution are applied. And when Singapore allows international tourists again, let me know, maybe we can grab a cup of Kopi coffee. And if you're like me dreaming about traveling again, you need to know about an app for making cheap international calls to mobile and landline phones called Yola. Big thank to Yola for sponsoring this video. I personally call my parents at least once a week and I know how it's important for them. When you're traveling abroad, you notice that sometimes international phone calls are ridiculously expensive. So When you need to stay connected and support your loved ones in the other part of the world, you can use Yola to call your home country at a fraction of the cost. And unlike some other apps, your phone number is always shown to the person you're calling. So your friends and family always know that you calling them, not some phone scammer. I mean, if it's not what you actually do for a living. Yeah, but if you, just like me, want to make cheap international calls, get the Yola app using the link in description below. And if you enter the promo code MAXCHERNOV, you will get a pleasant bonus. Stay in touch with your loved ones, even if they are far away, and come visit me in Singapore sometime.